Hey, how's it going? My name is Awais and I welcome you to this iOS development with Swift and Xcode crash course. I'm going to be your instructor for this course. I'm really excited to have you on board. It is a crash course, but it will cover everything that is required to become iOS a native developer with Swift and Xcode. I'm really excited, so let's get started by looking at what we have in this course. So first of all, we're going to start by looking at Swift UI. We will learn how to build user interfaces with Swift. We'll learn how to use Xcode to drag and drop Swift components to our app. And we're also going to explore Swift UI official documentation. So basically, we have Xcode, we have a Swift as a programming language, we got Swift UI, framework to build user interfaces. I will talk about Apple APIs. We also take a look at app deployment. Learn how to learn on your own. Most of the videos are going to teach you what they have on the screen, but they don't teach you where they're getting the information from or how do you explore more and become iOS developer, because learning from videos can be very, very long. After this crash course, you should be able to go ahead and then explore more about Swift UI, Swift, and Apple development. So documentation, and we're going to explore things together. Now, there's no prerequisite for this course, but these are the things that are good to have. If you have any previous programming experience with any technology like web development or even some backend development, that's surely going to help you, because Swift is a programming language which has all the common concepts like if statement, loops. To become iOS developer, you should be familiar with iOS-based devices like iPhone and iPad. And I'm pretty sure you have those devices in hand. So we are going to take a look at APIs provided by Apple for those particular devices. Next concept is how internet works. So whenever you use a mobile applications, you notice that you are going to fetch some data from a backend server. Now, if you understand how the internet works, how mobile devices or even websites communicate to backend servers through HTTP, that's going to help you as well. Last thing, we should have Apple developer account, because without Apple developer account, you are limited in a few things. So if you want to follow along with this video, you can follow along with this video without Apple developer account. But if you are going to submit your own projects to Apple App Store, then you're going to need Apple developer account. And I've shown you in this video that how do you package your application and deploy it to the App Store Connect, which requires Apple developer account. So if you have that, that's pretty amazing. If you don't, think about getting it, because if you're going to start learning iOS development, you're going to have to deploy an app to the Play Store to make it available for the public. And yeah, it's basically required. So get it. All right, next thing, learn as fast as possible. Learning from videos can be very, very long. A lot of the instructors talk a lot without showing you a lot. So I'm gonna just try talking to you straight away on topics to the point, no fluff, and we're gonna jump on writing code as fast as possible in a few minutes. So this is the most I've talked in this video, and I'm gonna try talking less and less and show you where do you go and explore more on your own, and how the Apple ecosystem works and how the Apple iOS development works. Let's get started with iOS development using Swift and Xcode. I'm going to show you the final product that we will be building in this video. So I've got this application running. That's the main project for us. So as you can see, we got this login form, email, password. I have this register page. I can click on that button. That'll take me to the register page. I can go back to login, and we'll click on a login button, and that'll take us to this main view where we have this dashboard, profile, and more. So basically, you will learn all this navigation, a UI, and Swift. There's a lot of things that you need to understand to be able to build something like this. So this is obviously crash course. We'll refer to the documentation, and after watching this video, you will be up and running with iOS development. At least you will be able to explore more on your own and then build a proper application. So before we start, please make sure you subscribe and like this video. If you need any help with iOS development or there is any project that you need my help, please send me an email and you can find my email in the description of this video. So yeah, enjoy this video and let me know in the comments below if you like this video. Let's set up our development environment on Mac. To set up environment development, all you have to do is download and install Xcode. So you go to App Store and then search for Xcode. So I'll type Xcode, enter, and now you can see I've already installed Xcode on my Mac. So if you haven't installed it, go ahead and install it. It's the same way as you install any other application. Second application I would like to show you is this Playgrounds. We're going to spend some time learning Swift programming language as well, so I would like to write Swift in Swift Playgrounds, which makes it a lot easier to write Swift code and then execute that and see the results on the side. Then we will obviously jump onto Xcode as well, but to learn Swift, Playgrounds is the best application. So simply click on this cloud icon because I downloaded it. So go ahead and download Swift Playground as well. I'm going to click on this open button to open Swift Playgrounds. Next, we are going to create a new playground. I'm going to go click on File menu, click on New Blank Playground. Let's take a look at user interface of Playground. First of all, I would like to click on this button, which will open the console for me. And this is the area where I'm going to see my code. On the left, you can start typing Swift code. Wasting time, we are going to type our code. I'll start by typing print, parentheses, double quotes, and I'll type hello world. And this statement will print out hello world for us onto the console. And the way you do that is by clicking on this play button here. Let's click on that and you'll see hello world. So this statement basically wrote this hello world for us onto the console. You can also have a shortcut key. So if you don't want to take your cursor here and then click on this button, you can simply go to this run menu and take a look at what is shortcut key for that. So it's Command R. So I'll simply type Command R and it will run our code. That makes it easier for us to write our Swift code. Next, we're going to click on this button here. This will help us to debug our code. So if you say step slowly, now if I create a couple of these print statements, let's say these ones, and I'm going to click on this step slowly. And once I do that, you will see it is now highlighting the line it is executing. And you can see the execution print out this hello world. So it's very easy. If you want to see how your code is executing, you can basically click on this button here and then say step slowly. Let's clear the console. I can right click here, click on clear console. We're going to try learning Swift as fast as possible. To refer the documentation, we are going to look at some of the resources on Apple developer website. So you see this developer.apple.com/develop, and here we have all the resources for Apple development, including all the APIs. So we got the Swift UI and the Swift. So first we're going to get ourselves familiar with the Swift. So I'll click on Swift and it will tell me where is the documentation for that. So here's some of the guide that you can go through. But before you do that, if you're a totally beginner, I would highly recommend to take a look at Swift documentation. So if I click on this view resources button and click on this Swift programming language, open this in a new tab. Let's switch this page into dark mode. In this documentation, we have this Swift tour, which is a brief summary of a programming language guide, which is an in-detail tutorial series for Swift programming. So if you're a totally beginner, I would like you to check out this language guide and language reference. Reference is basically everything that is provided by Swift will be available here. We'll go to Welcome to Swift and take a look at a tour. We've already seen this print statement, print hello world, which basically prints out on a console. If you're a totally beginner, don't have any experience in any of the programming language, then this language guide will be better starting point. All the programming language out there is like Python, JavaScript, C, C++, Ruby, anything out there which is a programming language will have all of these common concepts. All you need to know is the syntax of that particular programming language. Similar in Swift, we have this basic operators, strings and characters. We got collection types, control flows, functions, classes. The goal for this crash course would be to learn the syntax of Swift programming language as fast as possible so we can get up and running with Xcode and start building a user interface with Swift UI. So here we're going to go to Welcome to Swift, go to Language Tour. We already seen this print statement, which print out something on the console. You have these simple values. There are two ways that you can create a variables, var and let. So if you want to create a variable, I'll use var, a equal to, I can specify a string, a number, or any of the data type provided by Swift. So I'll just say hello world, and I'm going to use this print statement, and I'm going to print hello world by referencing its memory location, which is this variable. Let's remove the top one. I'm going to press Command R to run the code, and you'll see hello world there. So you can see we created the variable there. Now we can also use this let keyword. We'll say b equal to hello world, and I'm going to print out b. So let's run the code. You will see the result hello world. What's the difference between var and let? Well, one create constants, other one create variables. We go to documentation, and here in simple values, it specifies use let to create a constant or var to make a variable. So what is the difference? Well, the difference is var can be modified after it is initialized, but constants cannot be modified after it is initialized. So I'm going to say a equal to new hello world, and I'm going to use b equal to new b hello world. Okay, and once I do that, you will see a red dot right here. Well, this is telling us that there's a problem with your code. I will click on that. It's going to tell me cannot assign to value b is a let constant. Change let to var to make it immutable. So as you can see, it is mutable. It is immutable, which means it cannot be changed after it is initialized. So Swift Playground is nice enough to give us this fix button. I'll click on that, and this will actually go ahead and fix that for me. Run this, and we don't have any errors. Simple words, when you specify constants, you cannot assign a new value to it after it is created. So we create a constant b. I cannot use b and assign it a new value. As you'd see, we got an error. And variable, once you assign it, you can change its value whatever you like, doesn't really matter. And we can also specify the type of the value that you assign to a variable. Let me remove the code. I'll use var x equal to 5. Okay, and another thing we just quickly talk about, the semicolons are optional in Swift programming. You can specify them or you don't. It's completely up to you. Let's take a look at where a documentation is telling us about the semicolons being optional. We'll go here. I will take you to this language guide. Click on basics, and in the basics you will see semicolon, and there you go. It says unlike many other languages, Swift does not require you to write a semicolon after each statement in your code, although you can do so if you wish. However, semicolons are required if you want to write multiple separate statements on a single line. So for example, if I want to create another variable, I'll say var y equal to 10. Now it is going to throw an error. You can see here it says consecutive statements on a line must be separated by this semicolon. So I'll type this semicolon here, and you can see we no longer have that error. Let's move this y to the next line and add semicolon. There are two types of programming languages out there, a weakly type and strongly type. Strongly type basically means that when you create a variable or a constant and you specify a value for that, you have to specify the type for that as well. In Swift, you can specify the type, or you can let compiler to decide or check for the type. For example, here we have this 10 assigned to y. It's fairly simple. Compiler can understand this is an integer type. Now we have the different types of data in Swift. We have strings, numbers, we have booleans, we got arrays, we got dictionaries. So here we have a simple number. How do we specify its type? Well, the syntax for that is very simple. You specify colon and then type the type of it. So in this case, that would be int type. I'm gonna make a space here. And we also have a 5, which is an integer assigned to x. Now, if I try to assign this as a string, you will see we get an error. It says, click on that, and in the error it says convert value of int to specified type string. So basically, I'm saying x is going to have a type of a string value, but when I specify the value, I specify 5. If I change the value here to hello world, you will see error will go away. So in terms of documentation, you're going to go to language guide and go to the basics. And here we have this type annotation. So basically it's saying, here's the syntax for that. You specify the keyword, which is what, to create a variable. You specify the variable's name, use colon, and then the type. Swift have some built-in data types. Like you can see, we got this int or uint, float, double, bool, string, character, optional, and tuples. We'll take a look at these separately, but just to show you a quick summary, these are the types that are provided by Swift out of the box. Let's take a look at the documentation. So here in the official documentation, we have integers. Okay, so integers are whole numbers with no fractional components. You can read about integers here. Very, very simple. The way you specify its type is int, and that's what we did here. Okay, next we have this uint. So Swift also provides the unassigned integer uint, which has the same size as the current platform's native word size. So you can read about that as well. Also, obviously, we have decimals, and here's the floating point numbers that you can specify, and the type would be float or double. So if I go here and change its type to double, and Playground is pretty nice. It is giving a suggestion. What we're trying to type is this double. Click on that, and then you get to see this double. I'll change this to float. So when I just select this type, then at the bottom, you can see we got this bool string int double, set, float, dictionary, range, any. Okay? So you see all the different types that can be used here, basically suggested by Playground. So that's very nice. I'm going to select this and change this by clicking on this float here, and you'll see the values change. And the problem is, because this is not a float, this is the string type. That's why Swift compiler is going to give us this error. The error occurs because Swift is a type-safe language. I'm going to take you to documentation, and here I want you to read about this type safety and type inference. So it says Swift is a type-safe language, and because Swift is a type-safe language, it performs the check when compiling your code and flags any mismatch types as errors. And here you can see it will tell you why, and it will reference to other programming languages as well. So this is a great read. Now you can see if we go through this documentation, it's going to be like 10 hours just sitting in this Swift documentation because that's quite huge. So what we want to do is we want to point out some of the main concepts that are basic building block of Swift programming language, which are enough to actually start building mobile application. And you can always refer back to this documentation if you want to learn more about Swift programming language, or you want to read more advanced topics in Swift. We're going to take a look at some more data types. So we go to the documentation. We've already seen these numerical literals. Let's go down, and here we have Booleans. Booleans are also very common, and it's a data type that is available in pretty much any programming language out there. So there's only two values that you can have, true or false. And Booleans are most commonly used in conditions, control flows, or you can call it decision making. Different programming language refer to this concept differently. So it's basically just true or false. So I'll type true, false, and that's it. Remove true or false. We go back to documentation, and we are going to take a look at tuples. Well, tuples are usually called dictionaries in such as Python. So tuples group multiple values into a single compound value. You can have a different data types into one compound value. For example, I would like to create a variable, and I'll say person, or let's say John, equal to, and I'm going to specify a name for John, an age for John, and also its grade. So we'll say John is its name, comma, which is used to separate the values in tuples. And I'll say age is 34, comma, and if he's married or not married, I'll just say true, and then we'll just end this with true. Okay, let's go back to documentation. So here it says you can create tuples from any permutation of types, and they can contain as many different types as you like int, or string bool, or int string bool. Right now in our code, we have this as a string, we got this as int, and that's a bool. We can print John. I'll type print John, run the code, and you get to see the result in a console. Now, one thing to notice that we have this John, but we don't really have a way to tell yet this is the name of the John. For example, we will have a last name for the John as well. I'll specify a last name separated by a comma. I'll say John Matthew. Okay, run it, and you can see we got John, we got Matthew. But how do we tell exactly this is the first name and this is the last name for John? Well, we do that by specifying the key for this value. Usually it's called key value pair. So if you can specify the key for this particular value, I'll say F name and L name, and for this I'll just say age. I'm gonna just get rid of true. I would say grade, and we can say 45.6. Okay, now if I run the code, now you get to see the result. Now, in this case, because we specify the key value pair now within tuples, we can actually just print out a one value. I can say john.f name, run the code, and now you can see it says the value of tuple f name, I name, e.g. no longer a member of f name. So what's the problem here? So we got a typo there. So we have this capital N and lowercase n. So it's basically has to go as a capital N, run the code, and now you can see John as return. Now if I change this to L name, run the code, and you get to see Matthew. Easier to specify the key for the value so you can access it. Undo this bit. Okay, I'm gonna have just John 34 true, save, run the code, and you get the value. The next concept we're going to talk about is optionals. So when you're working with professional applications, sometimes you deal with the data that is coming from a server, and sometimes you don't know if the data is going to be valid or there is going to be a data from the server. In that case, your program will break because it is going to expect the value of, let's say, integer or string or even tuple or your custom data type. If the value doesn't exist, then it's going to be a problem. So to be safe, Swift provides a way to specify optionals. So it says you can use optionals in a situation where a value may be absent. And we can do that by using this syntax. Here we got this int question mark equal to value. Let's demonstrate that in our code. Let's go to this line, and I'm going to start by creating a new variable. Let's say x. And in this case, we're going to specify its type to string. And I'm going to say equal to, I will specify type get from server. Okay, let's print x and let's run the code. I'm going to remove this code or comment it out. Well, there you go. We learned another thing in Swift. It's very common in all the programming languages. So what you do is command / and that will add these two slashes. This means that it is going to get ignored from a compiler, and compiler saying, oh, it's a comment. I don't really care about that. I'm not going to execute that code. So if I run the code now, you will see the value only getting printed from x. So for example, here we have a string value coming from a server. Just pretend it is coming from a server. I know it's not, but let's say it is coming from a server. And sometimes server doesn't send any value. So if I just remove this value from here and run the code, you will see it's going to throw an error. It says variable defined here. It says variable x used before the initialization. So basically, it is not actually initializing a value at all. So what about this question mark here? So if I type a question mark now and run the code, the value that x has is nil, which means if there is no value assigned to x, then the default value will be nil. And this way your program will continue running and will not break. So in the documentation, you say nil, you can set an optional variable to value that states by assigning it a special value nil. Okay, so read about that. This is a great read as well, but whatever I explained to you, that's pretty much the summary of that. Let's quickly go to documentation, and from this, the basics, we pretty much covered everything that we want to talk about. Let's quickly go to basic operators. In any programming language, we have operators. So an operator is a special symbol or phrase that you use to check, change, or combine values. So we have assignment operators. Now you probably be wondering, what is an assignment operator? Well, you've been using assignment operator, which is this equal to sign, and I'll specify a value for that, hello world. And this operator is called assignment operator, which assigns a value to its memory location, which is this name x. You can read more about in the documentation. For example, this x and y equal to 1 and 2, what it's going to do. So for example, you're going to create two variables. Let's remove this. We will say x and y, and then 1 and 2. So if I print out x, run the code, you'll see 1. So what's happening here? So if you look at this, let me use this tool. So x is basically assigned to 1 and y is assigned to 2. Actually, vice versa. 2 is assigned to y and 1 is assigned to x. So now you can see when you print x, you get to see a value of 1 in the console. Let's try printing y. Run it and you get to see a value 2. Let's go to documentation, and next we have arithmetic operators. So if you pass standard 4 or even standard 2, you should be able to understand this plus, minus, multiply, and divide. Quickly, we go to our print statement, and I'll say 2 plus 2, run the code, and we're going to expect 4. Okay, let's use 2 minus 2, we're going to expect 0 as a return. So you can have this multiplication by the stair, simple, run it, you should see 4, divide, you should see 1. So basic stuff, right? Then we have this remainder operator. So if you know basic maths, you should know what is a remainder and how does this work. I'm not going to explain that because I'm not here to teach basics mathematics. So basically, if you do 9 by 4, and use the remainder operator on it, you should get 1. Okay, it's very useful in programming to do certain logics. We have this unary minus operator. Take a look at that. Not going to explain to you. You can read it, very, very simple. So let's go all the way to this comparison operator. That's very important as well. So basically, in strict programming language, you have to check for certain things to be true or false. Not in just Swift, but in pretty much all the programming languages out there. For example, if I say 2 plus 2 equal to 4, if that's true, then I want to continue multiplying to a certain value. So this way, you can use some comparison operators. For example, here we have this equal to, or not equal to, greater than, less than, greater than, equal to, or less than equal to. These are very basic math concepts as well. If you know mathematics, the basics level, you should know what they do. So let's go to the code, and I'm going to remove this line. And actually, let's leave that. And we're going to print out, for example, x equal to y. Run the code, and I'm expecting to be false because 1 is not equal to 2. So if I change the value of 1 to 2, run it, and I'm expecting this to be true because this is the comparison operator, and that's what it's supposed to return because 2 is equal to 2. So if I change the value of 2 to this 2, so now it is a numeric value, and this is a string 2. So let's run the code. And now you can see we got some error. It says binary operator equal to cannot be applied to the operands of int and string. So overload exists. So you cannot really do that because, it's not possible. So what you need to do is you need to change this to, let's say, a string value, run it, and now you should see it true because it also checks for the type and the value. So right now we got 2, 2. If I change this to 3, run that, and then you get to see false. So very, very simple. Comparison operators will be the most common operators that you'll be using when you have to make any decision in your code. So take a look at that, and this is very basic. Just read about these descriptions. I'll tell you what to do. So next, we are going to take a look at this ternary conditional operator. So we haven't talked about control flows yet, so I think it's best to talk about control flows and come back to this very quickly. I'll show you the syntax for that. It's very, very easy. Okay, now here we got this range operators. You can read about them. This is basically used in for loops. We haven't talked about for loops yet, so that's what I'm going to explain to you right now. It's very, very simple. Just go through all of these and you get to know what they do. We'll definitely come back to these range operators and I'll show you quickly the syntax for them and where you use them. But let's go to the next page, strings and characters. So in Swift programming language, everything that you create is a part of an object. For example, this string is part of the string literal, which is itself is basically an object which can have properties and methods. I know this is maybe a little bit advanced concept to you, but this page will show you what you can do with strings and characters. How do you manipulate them? For example, if you want to, let's go and find something which can demonstrate what I mean here. So I'm going to go down, and here we have this string interpolation. So for example, I will go to this counting characters. Okay, so if I go to our code, I'll say print, and I will print simply hello world. Now let's just say I want to count how many characters are in this string. It's best to actually have a variable x equal to hello world and say x in print statement, and I can see hello world. But let's say I want to count the characters, so I'll type dot, and when I type dot, I can access its properties and methods. So I can specify this count method. So here you can see in Swift Playgrounds, we can see no documentation available. I'll click on that and I will run the code. And this time you get to see 11 instead of hello world, which means it is actually going through this string and it's counting and giving me the number of the characters available in that string. So that's one simple. So it's not something that I have to explain to you. You get to learn these things while you gain some more experience. Pretty much all the programming languages out there are pretty similar. I would highly recommend to go through this page and read pretty much everything on this if you want to master strings and characters in Swift. Everything it listed here is fairly simple and you will be able to understand what they're talking about. It's more like, how to manipulate strings and characters in Swift. Next up, we're going to take a look at collection types. So collection types are basically a way to store data in a different form into your computer memory or into computer hard drive when writing Swift code. For example, Swift provides 3 primary collection types known as arrays, sets, and dictionaries. Very, very simple. It is about immutability of the collections. The first collection is arrays. So array stores values of the same type in an ordered list. Very simple. So I will specify an array of integer first. Let's say var x, and then we're going to use int. But the way we specify int array is by wrapping this type into square brackets equal to, and now if I say 1, 4, 5, 8, 9, it is all good. Okay, no error. So if I use print statement to print, you'll see the values of array. But how about adding a string type or even Boolean? Once I do that, you'll see it is going to throw an error. It says, hey, you cannot convert the value of bool to expected element type array. Type int actually. So basically it's an ordered list of similar types. Simple as that. And then you have some methods to call on it, like you want to access the value. For example, with the tuple, if I say x and I'll say 0, and can you guess which value is going to be written? I will guess 1. Okay, I'll run this code and you get to see 1. So basically, arrays are index space as well, and index starts from 0. So the first value that array has will have an index of 0, and then 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's gonna be like, getting incremented depending on how many values that you have. All right, so that's arrays. Very simple. Read about them. Next data type we have is a set. So what is a set? A set stores a distinct value of the same type in the collection with no defined order. So the way you specify set is by using this type set and then specify the type of characters or values that you want to specify there. Then you can just use those values within the set. Syntax is basically defined in documentation. For example, here we can create an empty set. I'll copy this and paste that here. Run the code, no errors. So I'll specify letters. Run the code. And I'm not getting any errors because this is basically the empty set. How do we insert a value? Well, set is going to have some methods, and here's one, insert, and I can use that. So I'm going to, first of all, use letters dot insert, and here I'm getting a suggestion from Swift Playground, and I'm going to add a character. I'll just say hello world. All right, I'm going to run the code, and now it says it is a string type. So that's basically a character that was expected. So I'm going to change that to string and then run the code. Now I get to see hello world as a return value. Then I can use letters dot, and here's some of the methods that I can use. So capacity, contains, count, custom, mirrors, debug, description, and there's a lot of options available here because set's going to be used a lot, and it has a lot of cool methods that you can. For example, if I am going to say just count that, and it's not going to print out this because we need to just use count there. The value is like just 1. So I'm going to just copy this multiple times, and I'm going to say hello A, hello B, and run the code. I get to see 3 because there's 3 values there as well. Let's go to documentation and take a look at what else we have. So here's a guide to create a set with array literal. So you have this array literal that you can use to create a set. Now, information here is pretty comprehensive. So I want you to go through this. For example, iterating over a set. This is a for loop, which we haven't seen yet, but the point of me showing you this documentation is basically to show you how you can explore more. So we'll go down, and the next topic we're going to talk about is performing set operations. If you're coming from any 3D graphics software or any, C language or Python language, you will see we have some operations on sets, like Boolean operation. Like you want to intersect something or union or subtract something. Here's a guide for that. It's quite advanced. It will take a lot of time for us to actually explain this, but read about this and then you'll get to know what they basically means. And this diagram is very nice. And once you read this information, you will know exactly what the operations that you can perform. It's really called Boolean operations. Next, we have dictionaries. So dictionaries store association between keys of the same type and values of the same types. We have creating a dictionary syntax. So here we got this syntax. I will go ahead and then remove the loop and create a new dictionary. Let's decrease the size for our text. And here you can see what we're trying to do is we're creating a new variable. We're specifying its type, which is this int :string. So basically, this is a type of the key, and then this is the type of the value. So for the key, we have int, I'm going to start by specifying int, which is 1. And then I'm going to specify the value, which is going to be string. So we have to wrap that in double quotes. I'll say hello. Run the code, no errors. Let's go and comment this bit out as well. Let's decrease the font size like that. And I'm going to print names of integers. Run the code, and you get to see 1 hello. Now, for example, we have multiple values. For example, I'm going to separate it by a comma, and the second key would be, let's say, 5, colon, and I'll say world. All right, let's run the code. Now you get to see 2 values, 5 and a 1. So basically, you added this later. That's why it came first, but we'll talk about that in a second. But let's say if we want to access the word, I'll just say dot, and here I'm going to specify the value, which is 5. Run it, and you get to see optional word. Okay. Now again, if I just use .5, run the code, you get to see I can't access that, has no member. To be able to access the key, you have to wrap that in square brackets like that. Run the code, and you get to see optional bold. Let's go back to documentation. And here you can see there's a lot of information available for you to learn about dictionaries. For example, here we have this iterating over dictionaries. We're going to move to the next topic, which is control flow. So let's click on that. We got loops and decision making in this section of the course. Swift provides a variety of control flows like a while loop to perform a multiple task, if, which is like a decision making statement, a switch statement to execute the branches of code. So we're going to start by looking at this for in loops. You can use for in loop to iterate over a sequence such as items in array, ranges, or numbers or characters in a string. I'm going to simply copy this code from here. We're going to go back to playgrounds, paste that, and let's delete everything from here now. I'm going to press Command R to run the code. And you can see it says, hello, Anna, Alex, Brian, Jack. So what's happening? We got this array, which has string values. To iterate over them, we use for loop. Now the syntax for that, let me just make a bit of space here. So syntax for that is we use a keyword for, and then we are going to use a local variable, which in this case set to name, and then keyword in, and we specify the array variable, which we are going to iterate on, and we are going to use this print statement to print out every name from names. To make it simple, I'm going to just change this to x. I'm going to change this to x. Now in this case, x is just a local variable within our iteration, and this is what we're printing in our every iteration. Let's go to the documentation. So within a for loop, you'll find some more information and different ways to use for loop. For example, here we can use a for loop with this range. Sometimes you want to just iterate our something on certain times. You can do that by using this range operator. So instead of just names, I'm going to type 1 dot 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 5. And then I'm going to run the code, and you'll see it says hello 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now every time it retrieves, it stores the current value to x, and that's what we're printing. So I would recommend to read through this, read through the examples, and read what it says. It's not hard, it's just like we want to have to save time and we move forward and get to Xcode as soon as possible from this stage. So while loop is the same loop, but it executes until the condition becomes false. So it's going to continue going until the condition becomes false. Next topic is going to be conditional statements. Here we got this condition statements. This is like the most common thing you do in pretty much any function you're going to create or write code. It's conditions, and most commonly used is if statement. So basically, whenever you want to check something, and if the value is true, then you run the code, or if value is false, then you don't run the code. That is usually done with if statement. So for example, we will go to our code, and I'm going to type a new variable, x equal to, let's say, 5. And let's remove this code. I'm going to use if keyword, and I'm going to say if x equal to 5, then we use the code block, which is these two curly brackets. Enter. I'm going to type x is equal to 5. I'm going to run the code, and you can see it says x is equal to 5. But if I change the value of x to 6 and I run the code, you will not see anything executed because this actually became false. So if you read through this, it says it is the simplest form. The if statement has a single condition and it executes a set of statements only if that condition is true. And that's what happened. It evaluates this condition, and then if that becomes true, then it will return the code written inside this code block. Go back to documentation. We got to see if statement, but we can also have this else statement. For example, if this x is not equal to 5, then what do you want to do? Well, you might want to do something else, right? So we can do that by using else keyword, add a code block, and we can print out x is not equal to 5. I'll run the code, and it says x is not equal to 5. But if I change the value of x to 5 and then run the code, now we get to see x is equal to 5. So if the x is equal to 5, this is the code block that is getting executed. And if it's not true, then this will be the code block that will get executed. Maybe a case where you want to check multiple statements. For example, here we got this condition, x equal to 5, right? You might want to check if x is greater than 5, then do certain things. You can do that by using else if statement. So if I go to documentation, it says else if here. Let me try reading this. Okay, so because the temperature is neither too cold, well, that's what it's explaining. So here is it. An additional if statement was added to respond particular warm temperatures. The final else clause remains, and it prints the response for if any temperature are neither too warm or cold. Well, this is just a scenario they have explained, but the thing is, once you have this if statement get evaluated to false, then compiler will go to the next one. It will evaluate this else if one. If that becomes false as well, then it will go and check for the next one until it sees the else block. Very simple. So what I'll do is I will add another else if block. I'm going to print out, let's say, x is greater than 5. So here we need to use x greater than 5. I'm going to save the file, run the code. Now it says x is equal to 5. Now let's make it 6, run the code. Now it should say x is greater than 5. And if I make this to 4, then run the code, it says x is not equal to 5. And now you can see all three conditions are getting evaluated on the particular situation. So yeah, that's if, else if, and else block. Very, very simple. We'll go to documentation. Here we also have a switch statement. Switch statement contains like multiple cases, and every time it evaluates it, it can kill it or it can just continue running that. I want you to read through this because it's very simple. I don't want to waste time to actually explain to you. This is pretty much the same thing. Now let's go down. We have some other things that we can do. For example, here we got tuples with Swift cases. You got value bindings as well. So all of these concepts are a bit advanced. I would say not commonly used. They have a use case and they definitely you need to learn them, but not for this crash course. So you're more than welcome to explore more. We also have this control transfer statements. Like I mentioned just now, that if the switch case, there may be a case where you want to still continue running the code if the case was true. For example, here, the continuous statement tells the loop to stop what it's doing and start again at the beginning of the next iteration through the loop. So these are very, very important things to know, but I want you to go through this by yourself so you get the idea how to learn more. Next up, we are going to take a look at functions. Functions are basically self-contained chunk of code that perform a specific task. That is a brief summary. What is a function? Now you can start a function call by using this keyword func. Go to Swift Playground and create a function. I'm going to start by typing func, and you can see in the suggestion list here we have this keyword. I'm going to click on that and it's going to finish the syntax for that. I'm going to type greetings, and in the function body we'll just print out hello world for now. Now we've created a function. How do we invoke this? We invoke the function by specifying its name. So I'll type greetings, parentheses, and run the code, and you'll see hello world on the console. Now there's something special about functions. Functions can take the values and return the values. Think about a function as a machine which will take an input and then modify the input and then return the data or output the data. To return the value from a function, we use return keyword. You can either just type return as it is, or you can specify a value next to it. For example, hello world. And now in this case, this hello world will be returned from this function. But for now, we're gonna remove the value and I'm gonna run the code. Once I run the code, you see hello world is printed, and this is this line. How do we input data into a function to perform some action on it? You do that by specifying parameters in this parentheses. So let's say you want to print out something, what you put inside the function. So I'll just use name colon and I'll specify its type as a string. Now I'm going to remove this hello world and simply going to print out a name. And let's remove the return keyword for now. You notice that while we making these changes, you have this error and it says missing arguments for parameters name in the call. So what I'm going to do is type name colon and then the value. This has to be string. So simply type hello world. I'm going to run the code and you can still see it is printing hello world on the console. And the reason for that is when we calling this function, we're passing this value, and that value is read from this print statement, and that's what it's printing on the console. Now to make it more simple, I'm going to use this hello, and then I will just concatenate that with the plus operator, and I'm going to simply change the value to, let's say, John. Run the code and it should print hello John. So you can see that this is a static string, and then the value for John, it is getting read from this name variable. To the documentation. So within our functions documentation, here it tells you how to define a function and how do we call a function. And we've already seen that. And we already seen how do we input a data to a function and how do we return a data from a function using return keyword. We also have this function parameters and return values, and read through this and you will know what it says. Well, it's pretty much the same thing that I just explained to you. To make it very simple, it's just use the return keyword and then whatever you return from that you just specify next to return keyword. Now we have these functions with multiple parameters, so we already use one parameter, but you can specify multiple parameters by separating out with the comma. Let's just say x, and that could be value int. Now it's gonna ask you to specify x for now, so let's choose comma x colon 60 for example, and now the error will go away. So it's basically telling you, hey, you can add multiple parameters using this comma. Let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so next up, function without return values. Well, we can have a function without return value, as we can see here. It doesn't have to return every time, so just read it, and this will basically will tell you. Another thing we haven't specified is the return type from a function. For example, here, if I type this dash colon, let me take a look at the syntax. That will make sense. So here's the syntax for that. So we'll use this, and we're going to specify, let's say, int. Okay, let me make this smaller. Now you can see that we got this dot here, red. It says cannot convert a return expression of type this to int. So now we need to make sure that we return an integer from this function. So if I go ahead and use this return, and I'll specify, let's say 1, and the error will go away. If we run the code, you'll still see it's printing hello John, but it is also returning the value 1. So I'm going to call this, let's say we use var, and I'll use this output variable equal to greetings, and we specify a name as, let's say, John, comma, x, let's say 2, and semicolon. Now we are going to use this print statement and print out the value of output. I'll run the code, and you will see it says hello John, and then 1. What's going on here? Where did this 1 come from? So if I change this to, let's say, 100, save and run the code, you should see 100. And that's what it's returning from this function. And once you use this assignment operator, the value which is returned from a function will be assigned to the variable output. Very simple. So here you can specify the return type of a function, then you must return a value with the type of what you specify here. And if you don't want to return anything, you just don't return anything from the type. So that's basically the syntax. So here we have this function with multiple return values. So here we'll explain to you how to use the multiple return values. Like here, take a look at that. Optional tuple return types. This is one of the important concepts as well. So go through this documentation and you will know what functions offers in Swift. Next, we are going to take a look at these structures and classes. Structures and classes are general purpose, flexible constructs that become the building block of your program. We can define properties and methods to add functionality to your structures and classes using the same syntax you would use to define constants, variables, and functions. Unlike other programming languages, Swift doesn't require you to create a separate interface and implementation files for custom structures and classes. In Swift, you can define a structure or a class in a single file, and an external interface to that class or structure is automatically made available for other code to use. We also have some similarities between structures and classes. So you can read about what is the difference between structures and classes here. Let's go down and see how we can specify structure and class. Now, when we're going to start working with Xcode, an actual project, the struct is the most common that you're going to see. So we can create a structure by using this struct keyword, and then class by using this class keyword. So let's go and create a new structure. I'm going to remove this code. I'm going to start by struct, click on this, and I'm going to name that person. And I'm going to make it like capital P. And inside this, we are going to create a few variables. For example, I'll use var, let's say name. That would be a type of string. Var age, that's int. And we are going to use this initialize function. So I'm going to click on init, and then when you do init, then we can specify name, which is a type of string, age, which is type of int. Inside the initialized code block, we can say self.name equal to name, self.age equal to age. So basically, when we initialize a new person from this structure, we can specify the values on an initialized time. So let's go and create, let's say we do var John equal to, I'll use person. And now when I create a person instance, it is asking me for two things. It says name string and age int. So I'll click here and it's giving me this boilerplate. And for the name, I'm going to specify John. And for age, we'll just say 20. All right, now let's go and print out John. Let's run the code and you will see person, name John, age 20. So if I say john.name, run the code, you'll see only John being printed. Quick overview what we've done. So we created a new structure named person. We specified two properties of that structure. Init is an initializer function, which means whenever you create a new instance of a person, you can pass in some values, which will be a default values for that particular instance. For example, if I create a new, I'll give my name and I'll create a new person. For the name, I will take my name and age, I'll say 30, and I'll run the code, and you can see it has okay, so there's a typo there, so I'm just gonna fix that, run it, and you'll see John. But let's print John and print Awais. Run the code, and you will see these two variables were created from that structure, and it has its own value. So if I say Awais.age, run the code, and you'll see 30 being printed. Now, structures and classes can also have internal functions. So I'm going to use a function, click, and I'll say set name. And I will take that as a name, and that would be a type of string. And it's basically not going to return anything. And instead of the function body, we can say self.name equal to name. All right. Now let's go ahead and then change the name of one of the instances that we create. So instead of this, I am going to, first of all, have John.name printed. Let me just remove this line and comment this instance out as well. So we're going to print John.name. Then we're going to call this function John.setName, and I'm going to type, and this is actually a typo there, so that has to be a string, capital string. And then here I will say new name. All right, then we're going to print John.name again. Run the code and you'll see we have two errors. So it says mark this method mutual to self. Okay, let's fix that. And now let's run the code. There's another keyword that we had to use. So now you can see when it basically printed out John name, this was John, and then we called this function, which when executed, and then it changed the name, whatever we specified from the outside. And when we print John.name, that becomes new name because we're passing that here. So if I say John new name, run the code, and you'll see John new name will be the value. Now similarly, you can convert this into a class. Run the code, and now we have this mutating isn't valid on method. So let's fix that. That would be just function, run it, and now you can see on the class, you could actually just use this function without that keyword. So let's go back to documentations. I want you to read the first structures and classes, read the differences here, okay? And then the syntax that we've already seen. So keyword struct and the name of the structure, and a class and a name of the class. Now this can have a properties, so you can create constants or variables in that. Here you can see we have some more properties, and you can also create a new instance of another class within a class. Okay, let's go down, and here we've seen how do we initialize a new instance of a particular class. Then accessing properties, we've seen how do we do that. We do that by using this dot and then the property name. Okay, and then we go down, it says members voice initialized for structure. So read about it. It's basically a way of specifying value from the outside. So if we go down a bit, let's take a look at, here's some good information up in the diagram saying ht before resolution this was the values, and then after resolution these were the values. So here is basically a sample code that you can try. The classes are reference types. This is very important. It's basically more programming related concepts than just Swift. So take a look at that. Now, next thing, we can take a look at the properties, and here's the information. How do you specify properties, and what are the different types of properties that you can do? For example, this getters and setters, that's a very common terminology in programming as well. Take a look at that as well. Now we also seen a method. How do we create a method? So we use this function, and we created this method, and this is what we did here, count plus mount. So this is in the class, okay? But when it comes to structure, let's go down structure. So here's a keyword that Split Playground asks us to use, mutating. All right, so here in this documentation, it's pretty much everything is available what you need for your Swift journey. So there are some advanced topics that I want you to take a look at once you understand the basics of app development. Well, I don't want you to spend more time onto these concepts as of now. From this stage onward, we're going to work in Xcode, create a new project, learn Swift UI, and Xcode to build mobile applications. So yeah, the fun stuff is starting now. Let's go back to Playgrounds. I'm going to close this. Once you open Xcode, you're going to see this window. Here we got 3 options: create a new Xcode project, clone an existing project from a Git repository. I'm going to click on create new Xcode project. In this window, we get to see multi-platform, iOS, macOS, watchOS, tvOS, and others. What we're interested in is iOS, so make sure you click on iOS and then click on App. Click on Next and type the project name. So I'll type, I'm going to, for the interface, select SwiftUI, lifecycle SwiftUI app, language SwiftUI. Click on Next, and it's going to ask you where you want to save your project. And I'm just going to create the project. Take a look at the user interface for Xcode. So here we have this part called navigation area. That's your code editor. Then we have this inspector tool. Then we have this preview here. The best way to figure out what each part is called in Xcode is by going to the documentation. So when you go to develop and you click on Xcode, and then you go all the way down and click on Xcode help, and here you see the documentation for Xcode particularly. So we're going to go to get started, create project, and here it'll tell you how to create a project. Then you can also have this main window, which is this one. So let's take a look at this. So here it says this is your editor area, that's your debug area, and you can also see there's a navigation area, that's what we mentioned, a toolbar on the top, and then we have this inspector area. So that's just like a main window for Xcode. Very, very simple. So let's zoom out. Now, this is the documentation that you can always refer to if you have any, concern about Xcode. We're going to cover most of the things in this crash course, but I just wanted to show you this is the documentation that you should be visiting. There's also a second documentation. So if I'm on the same page, Xcode, we go down and you click on this documentation. On this page, it'll give you a documentation, but in a different form. For example, you have some essential topics, okay? You got code, you got interface documentation, and then you have other project configuration and debugging documentation. Now, what is the difference between this documentation and this documentation? Well, this documentation is basically a reference to Xcode. It will walk you through all the steps. For example, localize your applications. So it's going to give you all the information to localize your application with different languages. This is basically written in a tutorial form where if you're a totally beginner, you can refer to this documentation. Let's take a look at some of the user interface and managing files. We're going to refer to this documentation for the rest of the Xcode tutorial. So here we got this manage project files, navigating files, adding files, organizing files. So we're going to quickly take a look at all of these. So the way we create a file is go to File menu, New, and click on File. Here you get to choose a file for macOS application, watchOS, and tvOS. But we're working on this iOS, so I'm gonna just click on iOS, and I can create two files: Swift file, CocoaPod Touch class, Swift UI. So there's a lot of different types of files available here, depending on what you need. You can choose and click on Next. We don't need any file for now, so I'm gonna cancel out. In the file menu, we have some common options for Xcode, such as creating new files. And you can see you can create a new playgrounds right from this new button. You can also create Swift package, a workspace, a file, a new window. We also have some common options for opening files like open recent, open quickly. You can have options for closing the file. We can also duplicate the project by clicking on this button. So this is as you see save as in many other Windows-based application. You can export the project. You got this show in Finder, so if you want to click on show in Finder, that'll open up a Finder and show you where the folder is for this project. We go back to File menu, and we can also create a new tab, open a new window, create an external editor. So yeah, these are very common options. You can take a look at them. In Edit, if you've ever used any IDE, you will know that cut, copy, paste special. All of these are very common to all the programs. View will give you an option to change the view. For example, if you have this navigator, you want to switch to something like Find. You click on that, and that will switch to this Find. I'm going to zoom into this part here. Here we have a project navigator. We got the next one, which is something like, let me just go read from here. So here we got navigator, and we got this source control. That's what we're looking at right now. We got symbols, find, issues, test, debug, breakpoints, and reports. You can also press Command 0 to hide navigation, or you can filter navigation by Command Option J. So I'll click on this, it will hide that. I'll press Command 0 to bring it back. So yeah, this is like fine. You got this test, I guess. So yeah, take a look at that. You will know what to do while you have more experience with the software. We have a debugging area. So I'm going to activate console. And here we have a console and then the debugging area. So you can do a breakpoint right in your Swift code. Like if I click here, that will make it like a breakpoint. Right now, we don't have an app running, but we will take a look at that in a second. Let's go over to Find. Find gives you an option to find and replace file or text within the files. It's very, very handy as well. Navigation will basically allow you to navigate to different parts of the software. For example, if you want to jump back to the code, so for example, I click here and I'll jump back, I'll press Option Command back, and that will just hide this, like collapse this. So all of these options are here in navigation. You got editor options, take a look at those as well. Product, which will give you an option to build, test, or package your application for Apple Play Store. For example, here is a button for build. Shortcut key for that is Command B. So I'll click on that, and you will see on the top toolbar, you'll see it says build Xcode training succeeded today at 4:33. So I can also go to this product and then click on clean build folder. Click on that, and then it will clean the build folder. We go to navigation panel, and this time if I click on build, you'll see it is building now. So it says building Xcode training. This is a very small project, that's why it doesn't take long. So yeah, that's the option for building. We will come back to these options when we talk about them. Debug will give you some option for debugging. Source control, very simple. If you ever use Git, you should know what is Git commit, pull, push, fetch, cherry picking, stash changes, or discard all. All of these options are very common. You can also use these options from the terminal as well. Window will give you an options to actually modify the Xcode. Take a look at those as well. For example, if you have a touch bar on your MacBook Pro, then you can customize that as well. Help is one of the most important thing in Xcode because it's a little bit different in Apple world, where you will go to an IDE, you write code, but you will always have to open a web browser and go to certain link to take a look at the documentation of a particular technology that you're using. But in Apple world, they have actually built the documentation within Xcode, and it's very, very easy to access all of this documentation right in Xcode. So what I'll do, click on Help and click on Developer Documentation. And the shortcut key is Command-Shift-0. Click on that and you get to see this window. This is pretty much all the documentation that you can find in this developer.apple.com. Everything is available here, so you don't have to switch to a browser to take a look at the documentation. There are some things that will be different. For example, if they have a latest version of Swift coming out, they might update the website first and then update this along with the new version of Xcode. But this will basically give you everything that you need to know. Right now, we have this Swift. If you take a look at here, I will expand this, and here you can see we got this standard library in double string array dictionary and then Swift standard library. So you probably be familiar with the similar page. So we'll go to, let me go to developer documentation, click on develop, and we go to Swift. We'll go down and I will click on view resources. Then I'll click on Swift Standard Library. Now you see this is the page, okay? And take a look at this part here. And in the documentation, take a look at this part. Does it seem familiar? Well, it's pretty much the same page as this website. So it's very handy to take a look at the documentation right in Xcode. Let's close documentation. Right now, we're looking at this file, contentview.swift. And when I open this file, you'll see this area here. This is basically a preview of our application. If I switch to this file, as you can see, we don't have that preview. I'm going to click on this little button here. Click on that, and it says Show Editor Only. You got Assistant, Layout, Minimap, Authors, Code Coverage, and Visibles. So I will click on Canvas. Once I click on that, it doesn't really show me anything here because this file does not have a canvas, because this is basically not a Swift UI file. So to be able to see that canvas, we need to switch to a view file where we have this content view, a view, and then we have this struct for that as well. I will go to this button again, click on that, and then click on canvas, and you get to see this preview area. Let's hide this debug area. I'm going to expand the size a bit. And now you notice on the top here, we have this Xcode training, which is set to iPhone 12. I'll click on this button and I get the list of different devices that are available in Xcode. These are basically simulators. You can add and download more simulators, but we'll take a look at that later. You can also run an application from a real device. Like here, you can see I'm connected by Away's iPhone to the Mac. That's why I'm able to access that. Now, why I'm showing you right now is because if I change this to, let's say, iPhone 8, and then here's a preview button. Click on that. And once you click on that, you will see the preview will pop up and you're going to start seeing your application. Right now, it is generating a preview for our application, and then we can start writing code here, and then we will see the effect of that change in our preview area. This is very, very handy because you won't really have to compile as long as it is the UI or Swift UI that you are making a change to. Otherwise, it takes a lot of time to actually recompile the application and run it and see the effect. So this preview area is very, very handy. So there are some options here. We got this preview, which is right now green. We have this play button. We have this inspector tool. We can also create a new view. For now, let's go and modify this hello world to, let's say, hello John. And I can see as I'm typing here, you will see the change right in the app. Right now, the app is actually not running. It is just showing you the preview of this particular view. Okay, I will go ahead and then delete this text. Once I delete this text, save, and you'll see it says there's a lot of errors actually. So basically it requires some sort of a UI component, at least one in the body. So I have to undo. Before I add anything else, I'll just have to undo that. You can also click on the UI components in the simulator in the preview area. Once I do that, you will see Xcode is highlighting this text widget. Now this way you can see what you are going to work with. So if I click on this bit, you will see it is highlighting this content view. So that's basically content view under Xcode Previews. That's where it is rendering. So that is our preview area. Now let's talk a little bit about this inspector tool. Right now, you can see it is empty. Okay, there are 4 buttons here. If I click here, it will tell you about some of the project-based information. If you click here, it will tell you the Git, like initial commit or anything that you're doing with the Git, it will tell you here. If you click here, it will show you the quick documentation. So if I click on this text area, you will see right here, you have a documentation. It says a view that displays one or more lines of read-only text. It'll tell you the declaration for that as well, which is text, gives you a discussion how you do that, and then also give you some more information about that. Next is an inspector. So it says show the attributes inspector. Right now I'm gonna deselect everything and you're not gonna see anything here. But let's go and select this text. Once I select that, you will see the properties related to text. So here we got this text, which is the input value, which is hello John. We got modifiers, we got font, alignment, padding, a frame, and you can also add more modifiers there as well. Let me explain to you something with changing this text. So as you can see, I'm changing this. I'll say hello Matthew, enter, and you will see you have the text changed here, and it is also changed here as well. You can also change the font right here. Click here, and I'm going to change that to title. And you can see the effect. Now what happened? When I changed the font there, it basically added this code for me. And that is usually called a modifiers. So you got dot font, and then within the parentheses, you added this dot title. And this way you have the title and the effect in the preview area. You can also change the weight. So I will just change that to heavy. And now it is changed. Now another thing that it was added is font weight, and in parentheses it says dot heavy. Now let's say if I just cut this bit and I save the file, and you'll notice that the text is no longer heavy, or we don't have that title font anymore. And also it has been changed here in the inspector area as well. So either you change things in the code or from inspector area or from the UI, it will affect all 3 places. So I'm gonna undo this bit, and you'll see in the inspector area we have that. We can also change the alignment. I'll just change that to middle, and you can see here it says multi-line text alignment center, left, right, center. You can also have a line limit, a padding, if you want to specify. But whatever you do in the inspector area, you will see it will automatically modify the code for us. And that is very, very handy. You can also have different modifiers for different UI components. Like if I click on this add modifiers, you'll see all of these modifiers are applicable for this text UI component. So for example, if we want to have something, let's just go up and then find something, let's just say blur. Add a blur, and you'll see your text is now blur. How cool is that? So you can add multiple modifiers to our component, and depending on what component you're working with, you will see the list of modifiers here. And this is very, very handy. You don't have to remember all this, and you can just use this modifier drop down to see what's available to you for that. Next, let's take a look at how we run our application in a simulator. So here you got list of simulators that you have in Xcode. You can click on add additional simulators, will give you this drop down, and then click on simulators. Then you can get to choose what type of device that you want to work with. And you can also add that by clicking on this plus button and you can specify the model of the iPhone and then OS versions. Right now, I've only installed this 14.5 OS, but you can download more similar runtimes as well. I'm going to cancel this window as well. We're going to select the latest version, which is iPhone 12. And now you'll see the change in the preview area as well. I'm actually going to hide the preview area. So I'll click on this show editor only. Click on that and you get to see just the code. I'll click on this play button here, click on that, and then it will compile and build your application, and it will run that in an iOS simulator. So we're going to be working with iOS simulator from now on because it's just ideal because it's a real device. Not a real device, but it's actually acting as a real device. So yeah, I'm going to select the simulator. One thing I want to do is click on Window and make sure I have this checked on, stay on top. Okay, this way, if I go to Xcode, it doesn't really go in the background, so we don't lose the view of that. Maybe have this size. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, so our application is running, and if I want to change the text now, let's say hello world, and save the file, it will not be changed. It will not, affect the application running in a simulator. To be able to do that, you have to click on this play button, or you can use the shortcut key Command R. Once you do that, I'm going to click on replace, and then it will build again, and it will start an application. So when you build the application for the first time, it might take some time, but the second time and third time, it's going to be really, really quick. So either you use this one or you are more than welcome to use the preview as well. We'll see how we go, and we will probably switch between the simulator and the preview area, whatever is handy. Let's go over to the file structure for this project. So the first file you want to talk about is this Xcode training app.swift file. This is your main file. You can see it is importing Swift UI, and it is decorated with main, that we are using this structure named Xcode training app, and the type for that is set to app. Okay, that's what making it as an app. Then we create a new variable body, and then we have this type as set to scene. We can also have this window group, which we're accessing this content view. So here we got this content view. That's what is being rendered from this file. So if I just go and comment this line out and save it and run the code, I'm going to click on replace, and now you will see nothing will appear in our application because we're not rendering any view at all. So whenever you want to render anything, you have to put that into this window group, or maybe create a separate scene depending on your application requirement. So here's the content view where we have this content view, which is a type of view here. And this structure is just to create a preview for that in the preview area. It doesn't really provide any other benefits. So I'm going to take a look at this file again, and I'm going to uncomment this. Save, run the code, click on replace, and then you will see the hello world that basically coming from this content view. So this is the main file. That's just a view file, which requires a content view or any view with the type of view. And then you need to have some body with some view. Next, we have this info.plist file. This is just a configuration for your project. There's different types of configuration. We'll come back to this when we need to talk about any specific configuration there. We got this preview content. Well, this is just generated by Xcode to just show you the preview of certain things while you are developing. You got this test. So if I click on this, we have this exit test, which is basically a way to test your iOS application. That's basically out of the scope of this video. So if you want to learn UI testing or Xcode testing, I'll create a separate video for that. But mostly you need to take a look at this info.plist and then options, and then Xcode Swift is the main file, and then the content file. Next one is the assets and XC assets. If you click on that, you will see a folder structure here. By default, it will give you two things, app icon and accent color. You can actually create a new folder. So for example, if I click on this new folder and I'll say images, and I can grab any image, click on import, and then you can just bring in any image. For example, this screenshot, maybe let's bring in this screenshot. Now this is the screenshot. I'll right click and I can actually rename that as well. So show in Finder, I will just rename this to whatever I like. And to be able to use that, I can use the image component and target that in our application. So all the images, audio, video files are going to be here if you want to access those in your application. This is just your library for your application. All right, so now let's go back to this. I'm going to click on the project file. Once I click on the project file, it will switch to this view. Let's move our simulator here. And now you can see we are in this view. We have some tabs. We got general tab, sign in capabilities, resource tags, info, build settings, build phase, build rules. So in a general tab, we have some information for our application. For example, the display name. And display name is pretty much the same thing. If we look at in a simulator, here's a name for your application, and that is what the display name is. Okay, we got this build identifiers. This is required for deploying your application. Every application on iOS has a different unique identifier. So every application have a version and a build number. You can specify those here. We got this deployment info. You can make your application available for iPhone only, iPad, and now it's available for a Mac as well. So let's say you're writing a Swift application, you want to run that on iPhone and iPad, you can just enable and disable from here, or even for a Mac as well. Then you have this main interface, which used to be a storyboard, but in Swift UI, it's no longer required. Then you can allow your device orientation to be portrait or upside down, landscape, left or right. So usually when you switch your simulator, for example, if I switch to this way and I open some application like this contact, then you can see that it is actually showing me a landscape view. So if I go to straight view, I'll click here, and you can see it is changing. And now when I do this, it does not change. Okay, so that's basically device orientation. You can allow it to be portrait, upside down, landscape left or landscape right. We have a status bar style. We'll come back to this. I'll explain to you what it does when we work with this. So we got this app icon and launch images. Here you can specify app icons. So if I go to these assets and take a look at these icons, we have nothing. And that is the reason when I look at my application in a simulator, it doesn't have any icon right now. So let's open that up. We'll go back to main configuration file. Here we got the supported intents. Well, class name authentication, we'll talk about that later. We got this frameworks, libraries, and embedded content. This is very important and somewhat advanced topic, which we're not going to cover in this video, but I'll quickly talk about this. If you click on this plus button, you can actually bring in different kind of libraries and packages from, anywhere from your, for example, here's a reality kit or Safari services kit, a scene kit. So every kit has its own documentation and whole new thing to learn. Okay. So when you become a professional software developer or iOS developer, you're going to have to work with some other frameworks and libraries in your application. You got this development assets. This is very self-explanatory. All of the content that you need for a development goes here. Let's go to signing in capabilities. This is another very important thing. Well, Xcode make it very, very easy. You have three types: all, debug, or release. So if I go to debug, this configuration now is just for development purposes. And you can see I've selected my name as the team, build identifier. So what you need to do is you need to go to Xcode, go to preferences, you need to click on accounts. You need to make sure that you sign in with a proper account. So you will see the team and then the build identifier. So if you have an Apple developer account, this is relevant to you. Otherwise, no. We got resource, info. That's again some information about your application and the services that you're using. We'll go to signing in capabilities. Okay. And I'm going to click on all and I click on this capability. Once I click on that, you will see this window here. We got this list of capabilities that app can have. and we have this something like health kit, home kit. We got this background modes, data production, and now you see we are going to look for push notification. So if I search for push notification, I don't see that here. The reason for that in this is because I'm not part of Apple Developer Program. That's what I mentioned in the start of this video. If you are an Apple Developer Program, then you will get full access to all the SDKs, and you will be able to, work with all the SDKs. Now we don't have that account. That's why I'm not able to see those options here. But you will, once you're becoming an Apple developer, then you will see all those options. So for now, we just want to add one health kit to our capabilities. And now this way, as you can see, it says creating profile, provisioning profile. It's basically allowing me to use this package with my application. And I will be able to access health kit SDK. So here, all the capabilities that you can add to your application. We got some build settings. Take a look at that. That's very advanced. You don't really need to worry about that when you're just starting out, but later when you become very pro, then you might want to deal with this. For now, it's out of the scope for this course. Build phase and build rules, again, advanced topics. No need to talk about them now. So yeah, we'll go to this content view. From the next video, we're going to take a look at what are the UI components available in Swift and how do we use them. And we're going to build out 2 or 3 pages and then navigate from one page to a next page. Then how do we create a new view and use that in our applications? Right now, I'm going to basically go to File menu, New, and then click on New File. And I'm going to select Swift UI, and I'm going to click on Next. I'm going to make sure that I target this Xcode training project, and then within this folder, I'll click on Create, but first let's change this to, for example, Login View. And click on Create. Login View is created. You can see the file, loginview.swift file, and then in our code editor, we get to see this login view, which is a type of view, and we got the body, and by default, it places text into it. Here is a struct for preview. Now, how do we use this in our application? We're going to go to content view. And you can see here's a text as well, but this is being rendered from this main file. Here we got this content view. I'm going to actually change this and comment this out. And instead of that, I'm going to start typing login view, add parentheses. So in Swift, there is a very nice thing that you don't have to really import anything. Xcode will take care of that. Now, when I save this file, we'll go to login view or maybe just run our application. So just click on play button. It will open up iOS 12 simulator, and then it'll show me the login view there. So let's wait for it to finish compiling and then take a look at our application. There we go. We got hello world, and this is coming from a login view. To just verify that, we're going to change that hello world to, let's say, login view. Save, rerun, replace, and wait for this to finish compiling. It usually compiles faster on the second time. So there you go. We got the login view. So now one thing we learned is this is our main file, and whatever you render here will be visible in your application. Now make sure that you only have one view at that same time. So I'm going to delete this content view completely, and I'm going to make sure that I remove the references as well. Now there is some configuration in our project. So if I look at the project and I'll go to this build setting, actually build phases, and here you will see compile resources, and here we have this content view that is going to be compiled as well. So to be able to remove this, we manually can go and remove this, and there are other places that you have to remove. But when you're deleting the file, Xcode is pretty nice that it really asks you that, hey, do you want to remove the references as well? So here I'm going to go to login view and select this file, right click and click on delete. And it will ask you, move to trash, remove references. So make sure you remove references and then move to trash. Now this time we don't have that content view anymore. I'm going to create a new Swift UI view. Let's go to File, and I'm going to use this Swift UI view. Click Next, and this time I'm going to do Main View. Click Next, and we have the main view there. Now I'm going to go to Main Application, and within our struct, I'm going to create a variable, and is user logged in, and we will type that as bool, and I'm going to change that value to, let's say, false. Okay, now here within the window group, I'll use this if statement. If is user logged in, we don't need parentheses, is user logged in. If that's true, then we're going to render a main view. So let's type main view. Otherwise, else, we're going to use login view. All right. And when I save the file and I will rerun our application. Now, let's say this is false, so it's user logged in. I'm going to go to main view and I'm going to change this hello world to main view. So let's save this. We go to main file, and this time we're going to run the code. Let's replace it and see what it renders. Does it go to main view or does it go to login view? So now it's going to login view. I'm actually going to change the value to true, and I'm going to just fake it that yes, user is logged in. Let's run it, and this time I'm expecting to go to the main view, and you will see it should go to the main view actually. Okay, there we go. So we are in the main view now. Let's make this value to false, and we are going to create a login form. I'm going to rerun the code, and I'm going to go to login view. And here you see we have the preview there. I'm actually going to stop the term emulator or simulator and just work with the preview area. That will make it a lot easier. So I'll just stop this. Let's close emulator, and then we are going to click on this previews resume button, and then we'll see the app right here. So the resume button will only show you the current view that you are in. It's not gonna make it look like it's an app. So yeah, let's wait for this finish. Then I will show you where are all the UI components, and Xcode make it a lot easier to actually use drag and drop feature. For example, here is a text. What we want to do is we are going to use input field. So I'm going to go to this plus button, and within this window you will see we have 4 buttons on top. We got the first button, second, third, fourth. So these are basically code snippets or libraries that you can use to drag and drop things onto your app. So the first one is library. The second one is modifiers library. Third one should be, let me see the tooltip if it comes up. I'm not sure what is it, but if I click on that, it's just snippets. Go to media, and that's colors. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go to this view library, and the first one is button, color picker, date picker, disclosure group, edit button, forms. So we're trying to create a login form now. So I'll just select the form, click and drag and drop it here. There we go. So you can see that we got the form there, and I'm going to remove this text. Save the file, and you notice that we have something like this content area in our preview now. Now within the form, I will click on this plus button, and I would like to have a text. And here we have this text fields. I'll click on that, and the documentation will tell me exactly what is it. So text field, a control that displays an editable text interface, and definitely we need that. So you can create a text field with a label and a binding to a value. And if the value is a string, the text field updates the value continuously as the user types or otherwise edits the text field in the field. Very simple. Here is the code that you can use text field, and then you can have, other modifiers for that as well. So yeah, let's go to text field, grab it, and then paste that inside the form like that. Once you do that, you'll see here text field there, and for this text field, we're going to change the placeholder. For example, let's change this to email. And you'll see the change right in the preview. For the value, we just leave that as value for now. I'm going to go in and create a new variable. And this time, I'm actually going to use a decorator called a state. Var email, that would be type string, equal to empty. Okay, and then we're also going to use a state decorator for password, string equal to empty. Okay, now let's add a semicolon there as well. It's up to you if you want to add those. We're going to go and grab a secure field. So I'm going to use SE secure field and put it after the text field. Once you do that, you will see another secure field. I'll save the file and you'll see the secure field there. For the label, I'm going to use that as password, and we leave the value right there. So we can have a value of email for this and password. Let's save. Now you'll see we got some sort of error. Let me just hide this navigation area and see what is it. So here we have this convert value email of a type string to expected binding string user wrapper instead. Insert a $. So click on this fix and we'll see what happens. There we go. So now we learn another thing. If you want to reference a variable from your scope, then you have to use a $ symbol to be able to access the value there, because we're using this state. Let's save it. And now you can see here, it says automatic preview updating pause. So to be able to see the preview, you're going to click on this resume button again. Once you click on that, you will see two fields here, email and a password. Now, we don't really need a content anymore. We're going to need a button. So let's go and grab a button. I will just grab this button there and then just paste it after secure field. There we go. And a button is something really nice. We really don't need to have a button right inside the form, because that's actually not the part of the form. So we'll just remove this and we're going to place the button outside the form. Click, grab the button, and then paste it outside. Give it a space and then save. And now you'll see the button is in the next view. Now the reason for that is because we're not using any kind of structure or layout. If we go to documentation, so let's open up a documentation. Now we have looked up Swift, but we are looking at Swift UI. So if you look at a Swift UI, you will go to this layout. So we got this lazy VStack, stack. But what I want to show you here, let me find that 1 second. So we want to talk about stacks, building layouts with stack views. So if I go here, you'll see we got @stack, vstack, zstack. So @stack basically places content horizontally. Vstack places contents vertically. Zstack places contents on the top of each other. And we can combine these three stacks to build some nice UI. And I'm going to press Command and click on Form. Once I do that, I get to see this menu. And here it gives me a very nice way to add this form into VStack. So I will use this Embed in VStack button, and then I will just have this and then move that in a VStack as well. And once I do that, I will save the file, and you'll see we don't have a separate view anymore because we're just laying this form onto the VStack now. Let's move this button inside the form. I'm going to cut this bit and I'm going to paste that here. Let's ident the code properly. And I'm going to save the file, and you can see the button is right below the password field now. I'm actually going to change the content for that, and I'm going to paste text, and we can simply say login. And here we got the actions where we can have an object, and I am going to create a print statement here, and I'm going to say trying to log in. We can also use a section to separate out some content within the form. We'll go to library, and I'm going to use section. Grab that and then paste it here. I'm going to grab this text field for email and password and move them within this section there. Next, we're going to create another section. So let's do section there. And then I'm going to move this button within the section as well. Now, you can actually refer to sections with something like this. I'm going to run the code within iPhone 12 emulator. So let's click on this play button. And within this, we're going to go to settings. It's going to be a iPhone native settings. And I click on the home button and go to settings. Now we'll go to general, and you see all these forms are basically built out of this section. So here you got the section, you got the section there. We go back and maybe we want to find out something else like accessibility. Now here you can see this vision here, or this physical and motor. You can add those by having that section there. So let's go and close the terminal. Let's close that as well. Now if you click on the sections in the inspector tool, you will see the properties for the section. Click here and then you can add some modifiers there as well. I'm going to add a header for the first section. So add the parentheses, and here we're going to press Control Spacebar and to see the suggestion from Xcode. So here we got the content. If you want to add a content, footer, header, so I'll just use header. And for the content, I am going to use text, and we can say login form. All right, so instead of content, we just get rid of it. We don't really need that. Save, and now you will notice our preview is being paused. So let's click on the resume button to resume the preview, and we'll see it will say on the top this login form. You see, it's kind of similar UI that you see in native application. So far we have used two UI components: text field, secure field, and the third one is a button. Button is a clickable, so we were expecting to have some action on it. Now here you can see we got an action, which is print trying to log in. Let's try to run this in iPhone 12 emulator. Let's run it. And once this is available, we're going to open a debug console. So if you look at this button here, click on that. And then here is a console for us. I'm going to click on the login button. But you can see here, if I click on the button right there, and you can see it says trying to log in. So basically the button is clickable now. You can perform any action you want to perform actions here. We are going to move our login text into the center. The way we do that is by using add stack. So I'll click on this text by holding command, and I will click on this add stack. And while we have that in add stack, I can use spacer, which will space even from both sides. So let's do a spacer there, and we'll see that text will move in the center. There we go. Now press the option button and then click on the spacer, and that will tell me it's a flexible space that expands along the major axis of its containing stack layout or on the both axes if not contained in the stack. So that has helped us to move the login button in the center. Then you can also have some modifiers for the text, like colors and stuff. So if I want to change this font to, let's say, large title, let's see, that's the large title. I don't really need a large title, but all I need is just make it a little bit bold. So we'll just use a bold, and then we can just color it, let's just say orange color. Now, also, I would like to write this login form on the top instead of having this header for the section. So let's get rid of this section, and outside the form, we are going to create a stack again. So I'm going to, first of all, let's use a text, and we'd like to use this login form. And I'm going to press Command and click on the text, which will give me this drop down, and I'll say embed in at stack. And similarly, I'm going to copy this spacer, copy that, and paste it here, and then paste that here. And for the text, we will select it from the inspector tool. I'm going to make it bold, and I'm going to make it, let's say, title. Now let's save. And now you can see this is how our form is looking. Now let's go ahead and run this in an emulator. Click on this play button, select your device that you want to use to run it, and you'll see we have the form. We'll just open the debugger as well. I'm going to click on login, and you see it says trying to log in. Click again, and it's trying to log in. So we're going to learn navigation in SwiftUI. So if I click on the login button, I would like to go to the next view. For that, first of all, let's go and create a new view. I will go ahead and then go to new and file, and I will create this Swift UI. And this view is going to be a register view. So let's name it register. Click create. And in this view, we are going to use the form again, but we're going to have like a full register form. But first, let's implement navigation. We'll go back to login view, and we are going to wrap this code in navigation view. So I will go ahead and then say navigation view, and then just go all the way down. And after this curly brackets, just add another curly brackets there as well. Let's go ahead and save the file, and now we have wrapped that VStack in navigation view. Close this emulator, and we're going to stop the application as well. Now let's go to File and Navigation, and in the Register view, I would like to copy the form from Login view. So I will grab this VStack, say grab this VStack, copy that, and then let's take that to Register view. Okay, now I'm going to change this to Register form. It's going to ask me email password. So we're going to go back to login view and grab these two properties as well. Let's go and put them just before the body variable. There you go. And now we shouldn't see an error. Now we're going to just copy this and then paste it a few times. So first one is email. I'm going to change that to first name, last name, and we're going to create two more variables there. So let's go to this bit and then copy and paste, change this to first name, and change this email to last name. Both are camel case. Also, I'm going to have this as confirm password. So confirm password. Right. So let's go to this bit and then say dollar first name, and this one would be last name. All right, and then we can also have another secure field. We can just say confirm password and change this variable to dollar confirm password. All right, now I would like to go to this page from a login. Okay, so the way we do navigation in Swift UI is by using this navigation view. I'm actually going to remove that for now, and let's remove one curly bracket as well. Now I'm going to click on this library button, and I'm going to type navigation. So here we got this navigation view and navigation link. So let me read this. So navigation view basically creates a navigation-based app in which user can go forward and backward through a set of views. Wrap the root with the navigation view, and then you can use this navigation title and other modifiers. You need to use this navigation link along with the navigation view. Here is a boilerplate code that we can actually try out, but let's take a look at what's happening here. So basically here we have this navigation view. We'll wrap everything in the navigation view. Then here we have a list which has this navigation link which goes to this particular page. So similarly, we are going to use a navigation link to actually go to the next page. So we're going to create a navigation link after wrapping this VStack inside navigation view. So first of all, let's start by adding navigation view, add this curly bracket, and add another curly brackets. Now let's go and create a new button after this view stack. Right, I'm going to create a navigation link. All right, and when I use this parenthesis, it's going to give me some suggestion, and I'm going to choose this destination and a label. Enter, and that's it. For the label, I would like to change this to register, and for destination, all I need to do is simply type register view. I'm going to save the file, and when I click on this resume button, you will see the register button there. I'm going to run the application in iPhone 12. Let's click on a register button, and you can see it is going to the register form, and it is going to show us this back button as well. Click on the back button, come back to login form, we can go to register button. And all that happening is with this navigation link. Now we're going to go to register button, and I'm going to wrap this in navigation view as well. So let's type navigation view all the way down here. I'm going to add another bracket, and I want to try out one thing. I would like to hide this back button. To do that, we are going to add a modifiers to navigation view. I'll type dot, and I'll type hide, and from this list, I'm going to choose this navigation bar hidden. And by default it's false, but we're going to change that to true. I'm going to run the application, click on replace, and once our application is compiled and running, we will see if we click on register button and go to register page, we won't see that back button anymore. So click on that, and there you go. We don't have that back button anymore here. Now there's no way we can go back to login page. And the way we can do that is by clicking on a login button, which will take us back to the login page. So for that, we are first of all, let's change this to register, and we are going to create another navigation link. So right here, I'm going to, actually, let's use the library. So click here, I'm going to type navigation, and I'll click and drag and drop it here. And here's a destination, and for the destination, we'll just use login view, and the content is going to be just the button, or we can say label. The easier way to do that is by using a navigation link with different parameters. So let's try that. Let me just remove this code, and let's press Control Spacebar and choose this destination and label. Once you do that, then you have a destination and then the label. Here we're going to go to login page. So type login view with the parentheses, and then here we're going to change the value Let's run our application, click on this play button, click on replace, and now we should have this go to login, which will take us to login view. Go to register by clicking on that, and we click on go to login. That takes us back to login page. Now the problem is when you go to login page, there is a back button there. So to hide that, we're going to go to login view, and for this navigation view, we're going to add that same modifier. So let me find, where is it? So that's the modifier for navigation view. So type dot hide, and this is the one. We'll just make it true. All right, let's run it. I'm actually going to say do not ask again, so I don't have to click on this replace button again and again. Let's click on that. All right, let's go to register page. So now we are in the register page. We can click on go to login. It goes back to login. We don't have any way to go to register except this button. So now we understand how do we create a form, a login page, or register page, and then navigate between two views. Next, we are going to go to login page, and from login page, I would like to click on the login button, show an alert if the user is logged in, and allow us to navigate to our main view, where we will implement tabs at the bottom and different views. So it's going to be like a tabs view. Let's do that next. We are in login view, and within the login view, I'm going to go to this button. And here we're just printing out trying to log in. To go to the main view, we could actually create this navigation link. But instead of that, I would like to click on this login button and then go to navigation. To achieve that, we need to create a variable. Right on above, we are going to create a state variable. So I'm going to just copy this, paste it, and I'll say go to main, and that's going to be a type bool, and we're going to specify the initial value, which would be false. After creating this variable, we're going to go into our first VStack, and I'm going to create a navigation link here. And this time I'm going to use this destination, is active, and a label. And for the destination, we're going to use main view. For is active, we're going to use the variable that we created, go to main. For the label, we are going to add two curly brackets, and inside that, we're going to use empty view. All right, so now let's go to our button. Here's a button. I'm going to use this self.goToMain equal to true, and that's it. Now let's run our application in iPhone 12. Now we get an error. It says, okay, we don't really need to use $sign there. Let's run it. And now when we click on the button, this code will execute and the value of goToMain will become true. And that's when this navigation will trigger, because it's looking for this goToMain value. Once it becomes true, then it's going to take us to this main view. And for the label, it's basically empty view. It's not going to show anything on the screen. And I'm going to click on this login button now, and there you go. It takes us to main view. Let's go to the main view. And first thing we're going to do is wrap this text in navigation view. So let's use navigation, and let's move this text here, VStack, and let's see. Let's move our text here. Okay, now we are going to run our code, but before we do that, we are going to hide this back button. The way we do that is very, very easy. So we're going to use this modifier dot navigation bar hidden, and we're going to set the value to true. I'm going to run the code again, and when we click on a login button, it takes us to this main view. Let's try that. Okay, so now we don't see that back button. Next, we are going to create tabs in main view. Before we do that, I'm going to go to Xcode training app.script file, and I'm just going to make it true because I don't want to go to login page and then click on login to get to this main view. And I would like to get to this page directly as long as I'm working with tabs. Let's close this emulator. I'm going to close it, and we're going to go to Canvas, and I'm going to click on the resume button. And while I work on our tabs area, I'm going to make sure that I will run the application in a simulator in Canvas. This way we can create a change and then take a look at that right next to our code. So let's decrease the size of it. We're going to click on this little button here, this one, and this will basically run our application such as a simulator. Alright, so let's get rid of this text. Save that, and I'm going to go to library, and I'm going to search for tabs view, and then drag that right here. Let's save that, and now you can see we got the tab view in the VStack. We don't really need a VStack here, so let's get rid of that. Save it, and we got two tabs right now. I'm going to click on this tab, and it takes me to this tab content 2. If you click on tab level 1, it will change the content there. Now this is okay, but we want to go to a separate view where we click on one of these tabs here. The way you do that is by creating a new view. So let's go to File menu, and I'm going to create a new folder. So let's create a new group, and we will name that main views, and we're going to create two views here. Let's create a new file there, and we're going to create Swift UI. First of all, let's change the name to dashboard view. Let's click on create. Let's go and create a new file. That would be Swift UI file, and we're going to change the name from Swift UI to, let's say, more view. Create, and let's go ahead and then create another file, new file, next, and then change the name to, let's say, profile. Okay, now all of these content is pretty similar. So we're gonna change this text to, let's say, profile view. I'm gonna go to this more view, and let's type more view here. Dashboard, let's change the dashboard. And now we can go back to our main view. I'm going to remove these two texts, and I'm going to directly target dashboard view dot tab item. And for the label, we are going to simply use dashboard. We're going to have to fix this, so that would be a label. And let's remove this. And in the label, we're going to first of all have a title and icon. So for the title, we can simply type dashboard, and for this we just leave that icon for now. And now once we save this, click on resume, and we should see a dashboard view. So there you go, that's the icon, and that's the dashboard view that there. So we can copy this and create more views. So I'm just going to copy this dashboard view, paste that, and I'm going to change this dashboard to profile view and change the text to profile. And for the system name, we can change the name to, let's say, profile. I'm not sure if the icon exists, but let's see. If we click on resume, we'll see, oops, that's not what we want to do. We don't want to run that in the emulator. But let's see, here we got the profile view. If I click on that, you can see we have that. Instead of the profile, I would like to use person. Let's see if, okay, there is an icon named person. Let's go and copy this again and then paste it. We're gonna use more view, and let's type more, and here we just type dashed. Let's see if there's an icon for that. No icon, so I'm just gonna use this gear icon. Okay, so there you go. So now we got the tabs: profile view, more view, and dashboard view. For the dashboard, I'm going to use this icon there. So let's remove this and get this icon there. Now if we resume it, I think we made a mistake here, so that's gonna be a parenthesis for that. So there you go. So we got this dashboard icon, profile icon, and a more icon. And when you click on this, it will take you to specific view. To verify that, we're gonna go to, let's say, more, and we are going to add a list here. Let's click on this plus button and let's try finding a list here. And this is going to be, creating another view. So we're going to have to wrap that in VStack. So click and embed that in VStack, and let's get rid of this. Okay, and let's grab some more URL elements. So here we got an error because we really needed that. So I'll just cut this, put that in a VStack. Let's save it. Error will go away. We go to the library again, and this time we're going to find, let's just say, there's a lot of things like circle. Okay, there you go. We got circle. And if we go to main view, I go to more view, and you'll see the circle there. So instead of running an application in emulator, I think it's better to run in emulator inside our canvas. That'll just make our development a little bit faster, because if I go and change the text, for example, in a dashboard view, I'll change this to my dashboard. We'll go to main, where our application is running, and you can see the change right here. You don't have to reset or restart emulator every time you make a change. It automatically reflects the change in your canvas. So yeah, we created this view. Now let's go to main app file. I'm going to turn it to false, and this time I'm actually going to run it. So let's run the application. We made this value to false. That's how we're seeing this login form. I'm going to click on register button. That'll take me to register form. We'll go back to login page, and I'm going to click on login. That'll take us to a main view where we can switch between more, profile, and dashboard. And usually when you take a look at any application out there, these are the most common navigation that most of the applications have. They will have a separate section for authentication. So we don't have that structure done properly, but if you're coming from any other programming language, you should be able to figure out what the structure should look like. Like, you'll have something like authentication module. You'll have some packages where you will do your Swift code. Now, again, I've shown you in this video how to create a navigation and just a Swift UI. Now it's up to you how you utilize this knowledge and explore more. Make sure to check out the documentation. I'm going to close the emulator, and the documentation is basically the best way to learn Swift and the programming. Next, we are going to basically finish this video. It's quite long already. Now, this is just the first part. I'll be creating more videos on Swift and Swift UI, and we'll show you more tutorials about these different kits available in Apple ecosystem. So take a look at the documentation, and this information should be enough for you to explore more on iOS development and also explore more how to use these documentation or how to use these APIs provided by Apple. The one thing I mentioned in the start that I will be showing you how to do a deployment, which definitely I'll do. So I will organize this video into a playlist. This is the part 1, and in the next part we will take a look at how do we package and publish our application to the Apple App Store. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Cheers.